I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, international study is a big emphasis at Missouri Southern, and this past spring we had some students from the Department of Communication take a trip to Paris for a specific international study opportunity. Joining me, we have two students. We have Kelley and Jack Girard, as well as the instructor, Kisa Clark. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
This is part of a semester-long course, and Kisa, you led that course, so perhaps explain to the audience how this trip abroad tied into a course.
Yeah, exactly. So the seminar that you mentioned that we went to is the International Media Seminar, and so the course that goes along, and the course is set up to go along with the seminar, basically. It's a global journalism course. So in the class, we're looking at the differences between journalism in different parts of the world, different countries, as well as broader issues that impact international journalists, whether they're foreign correspondents, things like citizen journalism, how economics comes in, so just a wide variety of international media. And then we go during the week of spring break to the seminar.
So you had about 8 weeks of preparation, kind of looking at this global emphasis of journalism before you actually got a chance to see firsthand what it's like overseas.
Exactly.
Tying that together. So from the student perspective, I'd like to know why each of you were interested in the course, and then of course the opportunity to study abroad as well. So.
Well, I think for me, I was just really excited about the opportunity to get to travel internationally because I've been outside of Missouri, but not to too many states. And so this was my first trip to really get to go out of the country and see what it was like around the world. And it was really cool. And also for me, I'm really interested in journalism and broadcast journalism specifically. So I was interested in the content of the media seminar itself, and getting to go to Paris was just a bonus.
Great. Jack, what about your feelings?
I've always been fascinated by kind of the political side of things, seeing how the world fits together and how the different cogs spin, and going to France and seeing that personally and understanding the relationship between, Spain is south of them and Italy is to the east. That's just not a dynamic we have here. We're an island nation. I was curious to see what it was like, and it is a lot different over there, and I was fascinated by that.
Great. Now, Kisa, both of the students here represent kind of the mass communication side of things, but you had a mix of majors in this class.
Yeah, it was great. And even the seminar itself, they've incorporated more public relations as well, which in our communication department, we have both mass communication and PR. So we had a group of PR students that went, and we actually had one EMT student. Because I think, and Jack was touching on this, that even if you aren't in the world of mass communication, we all intake media, and as global citizens, getting news about the world and global journalism as a key source of information really impacts us all. So I think it's relevant to a lot of people, but especially our mass comm and PR students.
And of course, Missouri Southern supports international travel. They were able to help provide some financial support for the students as well.
Yeah.
So did that help make a difference for you in making the decision?
Absolutely. For me, it made all the difference. There's no way I would have been able to afford to go on this experience myself, but the $1,000 grant that Missouri Southern provided, it was a big boost, and it made it very possible, and it made it a lot easier for me to save money, and it became a practical reality that I could pursue.
And this ties into Missouri Southern's international mission directly then.
It does, and I speak to Dr. Stebbins quite a bit, the international director here, and he spoke to me once or twice, and he said, really, this is a good time to do it. It's your last semester. Just pick up the grant and go. There's nothing really stopping you, and after some cajoling, I went along.
Right. Now, you are two of the whole group, so let's talk about the group, and then I know you have a picture as well, so maybe while we're talking, if they can show us the group picture of who traveled, but a number of students traveling with you on the trip.
Yes, we were 14 students. We're about 20 in the class, so most of the students in the class went on the trip, and we had a really great bunch. As a faculty leader, I was very thankful that, being one person with 14 students, it wasn't a hard job though, because they're all very, good students, well behaved. So we had a great bunch.
And you learned a lot about traveling as well. I know that if people watch the local media, Kisa, there was a story about how you were teaching how to pack for international travel. So it was more than we're going to go abroad, but you had to give some hints on traveling abroad.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because that's an aspect of travel, and I have traveled before. I actually went on this trip as a student 8 years ago, and so that can be one of those stressful aspects. And you learn the more you travel, how to condense and pack lighter. So that was one thing. I was like, guys, I will bring my bag and show you it is possible to pack for 10 days in one carry-on, and almost all of us did it. So
Right. So you had the plans, you had the date of departure, the picture there, you're getting ready to take off. So you flew from Tulsa,
yes,
and then made it all the way to Paris. Then, and Long distance travel and experience for both of you, perhaps for the first time like this.
Jet lag is a real thing, and it's a really not fun thing to go through. But I just remember when we landed in Paris, I was so excited to be there that it's like all the tired just fell away. And I was immediately just so excited to be there and to see all this beautiful architecture and to realize that, wow, I'm really in this place. And it was great. The coming back, the jet lag, getting over that was a little harder.
Going the other direction.
Yeah, definitely. The other direction was tougher to get over, but being in Paris was great.
So you get off the plane, Jack, you see the sign that says, welcome to Paris or welcome to France. You know, you're in a new culture. What was that first feeling like when you got off the plane?
So it was sort of historic in a sense. It was my feet are touching ground that's had people on it for thousands of years, and it was just it was a bit of a moment to just take it all in and realize I'm a toddler compared to most of this stuff, and it was a humbling moment to realize how much bigger the world is and how little I knew about it. And as I went around talking to people, I just thought, I have no idea what they're saying. It's one of those moments
barrier.
you suddenly know how little you know, and that stuck with me.
And people who are watching might wonder, well, how did you handle the language? They speak French in there.
Yeah, they do speak French over there, and Kisa gave us like a little crash course sheet of phrases that we could try to learn and memorize, but it's like you get there and you just kind of go blank. And so I think we all kind of mastered bonjour, like we could say hello, but it was definitely, I think that's the thing that I missed the most about home, was just like the freedom and the confidence to be able to communicate effectively with people. Yeah, I don't know, if I was there longer, I definitely would want to learn the language, and I think I would probably the longer that I was there.
When you're immersed in a culture,
yeah,
you definitely
absolutely.
become part of it. Right?
Yeah.
So the seminar itself, it was the main purpose you went there is to attend.
Right.
So tell me about who hosted it, where it was at, and that type of
Right.
stuff.
So it's hosted by the American University of Paris, which is an American university in Paris. And so Lee Huebner, who was the publisher of the International Herald Tribune for a long time, and that was the international version of the New York Times for quite a while. And actually, it was just in the past decade that they stopped, and now it's just the New York Times. But he also teaches at George Washington University in DC, and worked in Paris. And basically, I think when he was kind of finishing up, he was president at the university, decided that it would be a good idea to bring some of the students from George Washington to meet, these journalists, all these, big media people that he'd been working with, and then it just developed into this seminar. And so people that he knew basically got, connected. And so Chad Stebbins, who's our International Institute director, he had a connection, I think, from his PhD with them, and or one of the newspaper organizations, and basically then Southern as a group. And it's been over 2 decades that we've been connected with the seminar and going. So,
Great.
yeah.
So you were there. Were there other universities there? I mean, you had Missouri Southern's group. Did you have a chance to meet other schools?
Yes, there were 2 other schools there, Bowling Green, and then what was the other
Cowley
school?
College.
Cowley, and was that in Kansas?
It's in Kansas.
Yeah.
Kansas City,
Yeah.
Kansas City.
So that was really cool to get to see other people from other universities that were also interested in what we were interested in.
So it was a smaller gathering. You weren't lost in the crowd when you were at the seminar.
Not terribly. There was, I think, 50 kids total, rounding up a little. They were pretty personable, and then the speakers are, of course, very, very friendly. They were very open to student questions. They were prepared for that, and a good chunk of kids would go and talk to the presenter afterward. Oh, do you have a business card? Or can we make friends on LinkedIn? And they were very personable. It was. Yeah, personal is the right word.
So you had a variety of topics. You had news, you had the public relations, you had people who were Americans working abroad. So you got a taste of a lot of, so they were people who are American citizens, perhaps, who have been working abroad for many careers. Which topics or which seminar topics stand out in your mind that really hit you as far as, you said you were interested in the broadcast side of journalism?
Absolutely. I loved Jim Bitterman, which I think, is he the CNN correspondent there in France? And he was a great storyteller.
There he is.
And he was really great about answering questions. And I mean, you can just tell that he's a natural storyteller. So listening to him was great. And then I also, and I think we all really loved Eleanor Beardsley. She was just so personable and friendly, and it was also just really good to hear a familiar voice. Like, I listened to her on NPR here, so I was like, hey, I know that voice. It's good to hear someone from home. And she's just such an inspirational person.
So, Jack, how about your perspective? I know you've done both broadcast, but also you were on the chart, the print side of things here at the university.
I am. I taught, they had some interesting choices for print journalism, including a Vogue editor, and that really struck me. I wasn't expecting that. We had a good talk about what makes a good feature and really the writing side of things and what does that matter in France. And in France, a lot of print journalism is more punchy than we'd be used to. Their editorialization of print journalism versus TV is flipped of ours. While TV is a little more editorialized here, it's much more serious over there. And learning about that was really interesting. And speaking to Eleanor Beardsley was cool too, because she gave me a tip about how to find a camp that'll train you how to handle wartime journalism, because she spoke about that. And that was she says that's not a large part of her career, but it is fascinating how she learned so much of it on just doing it rather than being trained and then going back and getting trained and thinking, wow, this is a lot easier now.
So there's no real book you can pick up and say, here's how to be a successful journalist covering wars and conflicts and so forth. So a lot of valuable, I'm sure the PR people also had a chance to hear some seminars.
I was trying to remember, Edelman is this big international PR company, and so there was an international PR representative for the company in Paris, and so she was from New Jersey, worked in New York, and so it was really interesting to hear her talk. Her name was Megan, and so her job, right, is to decide, how to brand, how they're going to, put this message out internationally, and they send that to all the national Edelman, PR organizations within those specific nations, and then it's those PR representatives to decide, okay, well, how do we take this international message and tweak it a little bit, to fit that national company. So yeah, it was a really great variety, and a lot of, even I'm not a PR person, but a lot of those lessons, and a lot we could take a lot from all the speakers.
Everybody could apply what you're learning. Now, Jack, you mentioned the print versus the television and opinion and so forth. Did people bring up topics of free press, versus the U.S. versus other countries? We hear so much about freedom of the press here.
It was an absolute message. We talked a lot about what the press's role is and is part of their job now, fact-checking, and how long has fake news or propaganda been around, and that was a large part of the discussion multiple times. What really got my attention was they talked about their presidential run, which had a similar, it was also chaotic like ours, and they talked about different strategies, but the thing that really struck me was that their presidential campaign who won, Emmanuel Macron, rather than just, he didn't just say, oh, there's fake news, he actually went out of his way to provide fake penetrating outlets with false information to dissuade foreign agents and play tricks on them and then do something totally different. He had a whole different strategy than ours, and I was really fascinated by that.
So you learned a little bit about America when you're looking at how other people are doing, really.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting. I think being an American, I have the tendency to just kind of focus on what's happening here, but this class and getting to go to this seminar and being in another country has really encouraged me to be an international citizen and to think about things that are happening around the world and how it's impacting things that are happening here.
That sounds like something that whether you're on a global journalism trip like this or another department taking a trip abroad is kind of a common theme with Missouri Southern Study Abroad.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because I think, and that's something we've talked about in the class as well, because we're talking about this story, how it's reported in the news, but really this is impacting the economics of the United States right now, or how could this story and how it's reported impact then a policy change. So it's not just the stories itself, like these have real world impact on a lot of aspects of life. So.
And of course, the course continues. The semester's not over as we're recording this, so I imagine you've had a chance to kind of debrief, hash over what happened, experiences in the classrooms.
Yeah, we've had several assignments now where we're basically just reflecting on our travels and the seminar and applying that to what we continue to be learning in class. And I think having that supplemental travel, going on that seminar and being in another country, it just makes the class come alive for me. And so it's more than just reading about these things in the textbook and reading, supplemental journal articles. It's like I can apply this to where I went. And so it makes a lot of sense to me.
Of course, through television programs like this, and they're also doing shows we call it Window on the World for our students at Missouri Southern. The print side, I keep saying the print side, but the print aspect of the department is also benefiting through stories and your sharing as well.
As you know, I'm the chief editor of the chart. The week we came back from the trip, after the jet lag, I was aware of the fact that the art department did a Norway trip at the same time, so we did a split lead on the front of the paper where my story was right there on the right with the Paris side of things, and we had a centerfold of Paris and Norway back to back, and it was nice to hear from other students that weren't just comm students but also that had gone abroad and the similar experiences they shared, and I've thoroughly enjoyed printing that and editing those.
Right. And that also shared with the community and the campus as well, as they're learning from those experiences. Well, in addition to the seminars, you also had a chance to, as I say earlier, experience the culture of Paris. Lots to see, and I know you have some pictures that we'll see. And when everybody thinks of Paris, they think of the Eiffel Tower. What was your reaction the first time you saw that in person?
You know, you see pictures of it, and you've seen it on postcards, but it can't compare to when you're actually standing there and you're in front of it, and it's just so huge and larger than life. And I didn't know that it sparkles every night, but that was really cool. Yeah, it was just like the 4th of July every hour for 5 minutes, and we would, if we were outside, we would always go run to go see it sparkle at night.
Try to get a view of it.
Yeah, I couldn't get enough of that. It never gets old.
And that, Jack, you mentioned history earlier. That's a historical monument for the city.
Absolutely, they had graphics of it being built throughout the lower parts, the lower levels of the Eiffel Tower. They have images of its history, and I couldn't read French, but I could use Google Translate. It's got an image function, so I could read through the words. And you know, there was a lot of other. We went to an arch. I think it was called the Titus Arch or something like that, and that was really interesting because they had a long history, and stuff in France is big. Like it was truly. It was an adjustment.
All right, it's a different culture, different size of what they say, what they have. We had a picture up there briefly of people standing in front of a sign saying UNESCO. So explain to what that part of the trip was. What did you do at UNESCO?
Well, that was a field trip that we all took, and I'm glad that we got to go because it was nice to get out of the American University of Paris and go out into Paris and see an organization where people come together, and I thought it was really cool. I loved it, and they have a great view. They provided us lunch, and we got a tour, which was actually really special because they don't have the funding for paid tours anymore, so it was really a wonderful opportunity that we got to go at all.
So this was part of the seminar. So today was our activity. We're going to go there.
Yeah.
Did you know much about UNESCO before you went?
I knew next to nothing.
Yeah.
After that, I learned their primary function is protecting sites in a environmental sense, but also in a historical sense, and they protect important sites around the world, and they control a little bit how they are influenced or changed or altered, and they do a good job of protecting culture, and I thought that was really interesting that all these countries came together and pitched in together, and that was good to see.
Yeah, it's a branch of the United Nations.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have that office there in the Paris area. Sightseeing, you mentioned seeing the sights. What about the food? That's an aspect of culture that people run into when they travel abroad. So what was your reaction? All the choices, or what did you have?
There were a lot of different things. Up there we have a picture of escargot, which I was a fan of. Not everybody was, but I thought it was really good.
I forced almost everyone to try it.
Everybody at least tried it.
Everyone tried it. Yeah, no, I loved it. And there's so much bread and, of course, tons of cheese. But I think that the biggest thing that I didn't really think about was how small the portions would be. And so, especially compared to America, like, I don't think they have buffets over there. And I feel like they'd be horrified by the idea of it because I think they really emphasize the little pleasures in life. And so, you know, you have a pastry, but it's really small and sweet. And you have like some hot chocolate, but it's like a little tiny cup and the sugar's on the side. And so just over and over, I was like, wow, this is a whole new way of living and eating. And I grew to love it. And I kind of miss it. I lost 6 pounds, but I gained it all back when I came here, so.
It's from walking 13 miles.
Probably.
Walking while you're there as well. How about your feeling on the food or the culture of the food and what you found in the socialization?
I did have an excellent steak one night, and on a related note, a salad to them is yay big and right next to the steak. That is a salad for them. There's no bowl.
There's no separate bowl, and here's
Right.
your...
That is like a secondary chunk, like another side of fries to them. That's just 5 leaves of lettuce and some dressing.
What about when Americans go out to eat, you sit around the table and can have conversations. Did you notice anything as far as the culture of the French when they go out to eat? You're eating the same restaurants as they are when you're going out to eat.
I think I would just say that people are a lot more quiet. Public transportation, especially, it's so quiet. And I remember when we came back to America, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so loud and everyone's laughing and using big gestures. And I kind of missed it a little bit because when I was there, it's like, oh my gosh, nobody's talking, nobody's laughing, nobody's like going up and saying hi and asking how you are. It's totally different to how things are here culturally in America and how we interact with people.
Did you find this as well?
I did. What I noticed especially was the later in the day it got was the more acceptable it was to be loud. The loudest you could be was probably at 10 o'clock at night. There was a lot of outdoor, they eat outside a lot more than we do. And that's not just they're sipping tea or anything. They're actually eating and enjoying their time there. And it was really interesting how I could raise my volume as time went on until I matched appropriately. And that was an adjustment too.
Well, of course, you went in March, and people might be curious, well, what about the weather? March hasn't been great here in Missouri. What was it like in Paris?
I'm happy to say it was a worldwide trend.
Yeah, when it wasn't raining, it was snowing, so it was pretty cold. But I think that we were also excited about all the different things that we wanted to see that we didn't really let it stop us. So it didn't matter how cold it was or if it was
there
precipitating.
You are holding the umbrellas and it's like you're in a damp location.
Yeah, we just went, and I'm so glad that we did. And we did do a lot of things inside. We went to a lot of really cool museums. We went to an opera, which was amazing. I couldn't believe, I think it was 10 euros for a ticket, and I was like, I'm inside an opera house.
In Paris, yeah.
That's a good travel tip. I've learned that over the years that a lot of these opera, houses, when they want to sell more tickets, so if you go like the hour beforehand, which is what we did, you can get cheap tickets. And a lot of times they're not the best seats. Like we were up high and kind of limited view. We couldn't see like the entire stage. I was kind of leaning over and I could see. I'm like, guys, this just happened. But yeah, and so to tour that opera house, which if you've seen Phantom of the Opera, that's the opera house where that takes place. So it's this insanely gorgeous. I love Kate's expression was everything's dipped in gold because I mean it's just so ornate so normally to tour that, because that's the thing, to just tour this building, I think was like 11 or 12 euros, so it's so much better.
So you went and saw a show for the 10.
Yeah, that much, yeah.
Exactly.
So did you have some challenges in trying to decide what sort of side trips we were going to do, Kisa? You were directing a group of 14.
Yes, yeah, well we split up, so you saw in that photo at the opera, it was about half of us that did that. And that's something, as the leader, I wanted everyone to do what they, wanted to do, but we, beforehand, had everyone kind of pick the 3 places that they wanted to go to. And since I'd been there before, I kind of had some ideas of places that would be nice, and so we would just kind of talk the night beforehand and make a plan, be like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to leave at this time if you want to come. And most of the time, people would come, and we did a lot. I mean, they were troopers because we would leave at 8 a.m. and go see 2 different things, walk many miles before we go to the seminar, do the seminar because it was mostly in the afternoon, and then leave that to go straight to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower or go to this Sacré-Cœur in Montmartre, which is on the other side of town where all the artists lived. And so we made the most of our time, which is really what you have to do when you only have 10 days.
Okay, 10 days, you can't say I'm going to go back after the seminar and go sleep in my room for a couple hours.
Right. Even though probably some of us wanted to do that, especially when it was like 20 degrees outside. But yeah.
What about the difference of transportation? You mentioned public transportation and walking. Jack, did you observe anything along those lines?
I did miss my car more than I expected. But in all honesty, walking that much was probably good. I thought they did a really good job. Their signage is a lot better than ours. They actually have a lot of digital signs that'll say train leaving at X time. They'll have directional arrows or just basic tourist stuff. And some of it was even a little bit subtitled in English, and that was really nice. That made walking around a lot easier than it would be here. Where's City Hall? I don't know. Right. We just stumble around.
So you were able to navigate the transportation system competently.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with Kisa leading us all. I felt so much more comfortable knowing that there was someone guiding us. But yeah, we did a lot of walking, and I kind of miss that now because I drive everywhere I go, and things are spaced out a lot farther. In France, it's easy because you can walk, and the entire block is filled with a shop and a cafe and like a library and a museum, and it's all right there. But it's not like that here. You have to do some driving.
Much more spread out in the United States and the country and so forth. Well, what would you say to other students who are considering studying abroad? There's a lot of, the comm department does other things. There's a lot of departments that come on campus. someone comes to you, well, I'm thinking about it, but why should I do it? What would your recommendation be?
I would say that you have to go to really know why you need to go. Like, you don't realize how big the world is until you really immerse yourself in it. And I think it's really given me like a whole new sense of empathy and changed my perspective about how I view other people who are visiting our country even, because I know what it's like to go somewhere else and not know how to communicate. And it's a scary feeling. And so just to be kinder and have more patience and understanding, just to be more willing to learn a new language and to try new things. I think it's a wonderful experience. I feel like I've learned so much, not just as a student, but as a person growing internationally.
Jack, student comes up to you and says, well, should I take a study abroad trip while I'm here at Missouri Southern?
I think that 10 days is the best way to try it. I think if you're, I would be, I'd be lost if I had done it for a whole semester and I'd not known what I was doing, but I feel like 10 days was the best way to possibly make the jump without being able to, being unable to get back. I thought that was a really good way to sample it, and if it's not for you, it's not for you, but I can almost guarantee it'll be right for almost anybody.
Okay. And Kisa, you mentioned your previous travel experience. It sounds like this type of experience at Missouri Southern helped whet your appetite for future study abroad.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Jack's right, because this Paris trip was my first trip, as a student, and then I did a month in Guatemala with the Spanish department here, and then after I graduated, I did 3 months in Costa Rica to teach English, and then ended up doing a year in Spain, and so, had it not been those experiences here as a student to open my eyes and just realize that wow, this is such an enriching experience, and then building that confidence that yes, I can do that. And so I always recommend students to start with a trip like this, because when I was a student I was afraid, and it was really nice to have a leader, have friends that you go with, and then eventually it's like, okay, I can do this on my own, just every time I travel, I learn so much, and I can't say enough about what travel can bring to a person. So.
And both of you have goals to take other travel abroad trips, or maybe not part of a college, but travel abroad in your profession, perhaps?
Absolutely. I've always wanted to travel internationally, but it never really seemed possible. And so, like Kisa was saying, it just seems so much more doable now. Like, I can get on a plane. I can get around a new country. So I definitely want to go more places and see what the world has to offer.
How about you, Jeff?
I would definitely like to try a couple odd destinations like Ireland or Taiwan, and I want to explore something maybe a little bit closer to American culture, but something also much, much further. That's, France is sort of in that in-between stage where it's not quite a whole nother world, but I would really like to try and make that jump at some point, to try and just jump into something so far away from what I'm used to that it just shocks me.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank the three of you for visiting with me and sharing some information with our audience today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. I hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.